Welcome to WP-Tonic, episode 176. Today we're talking the biggest mistake that we've each ever made on a web project. What's our biggest screw up that we've ever done? Before we get into today's show, I want to give a big thanks to our sponsor, Liquid Web. For years, Liquid Web has been known as a managed hosting company with tons of options. But recently, they've designed a managed WordPress offering that's perfect for mission-critical sites. So if you're running one of those mission-critical sites and you're looking for improved performance, maximized uptime, incredible support, Liquid Web is exactly the partner that you've been looking for. Now, every Liquid Web managed WordPress customer also has iTheme Sync integrated into the management portal. And what that means for you is you can update several sites with a single touch. So if you sign up today using the code WP-Tonic33, you can get 33% off for the next 6 months on your managed WordPress hosting. So visit liquidweb.com/WordPress to get started and use the code WP-Tonic33. And with that, we'll start getting into introductions. We got the WP-Tonic posse in effect, and we have a guest. David, who are you, and tell us what you do for the people who don't know.
Sure. I am David Hayes. Relevant to this audience, I run a site called WPShout, which is WordPress tutorials for developers, and we're just relaunching a thing called Up and Running, which is, we think, the best way for someone to get up and running with WordPress development.
There you go. Yeah, and definitely. And then we have Jackie. Introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Jackie D'Elia. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm a web developer here, and I'm also the host of Rethink.fm.
Definitely, and go check out that show. It's a totally undersold show, and everybody should be listening to that too. Sallie, who are you, for the people who don't know?
I'm Sallie Goetsch. My business is WP Fangirl. I'm the organizer of the East Bay WordPress meetup in Oakland, California. And when the first version of Up and Running was coming out, Fred Meyer came on to did a remote presentation for our meetup.
Oh, very good, very good. Definitely. And then my co-host Jonathan, who are you?
Hi there. Great, John. Hi there, folks. I'm the founder of WP Tonic. I'm based in sunny Reno in northern Nevada, and we are your trusted support, security, anything to do with WordPress partner, aren't we, John?
Most definitely. And I'm John Locke. My business is Lockedown Design, and I provide custom WordPress development and local SEO for all you brick and mortar businesses out there. So jumping right into the news stories. First one is from the Tavern. Jetpack introduces a theme installation from WordPress.com. That, of course, has kicked off a lot of controversy. There's been a lot of talk around how the theme review and plugin reviews are. David, what is your take on this story?
I think the biggest thing is, in general, there's a lot of long-standing fear about Jetpack, and so this feels like another instance of people just being scared of what WordPress.com is role in the community is, because it is the 10,000-pound bear involved.
Definitely. How will this affect theme authors that are, say, like ones like Zarif, that rely so much on the .org repository? Why are a lot of theme authors reacting to this? Jackie.
Why are? Well, I just think that it's the nature of this now is that, WordPress.com is private, right? And it's not, it has the same name, but it's not really the same entity. And I agree with David that, I don't use Jetpack, so I'm not really the best person to ask for the perspective on that. I just think it's very bloated, and I just don't see any benefit for the work I'm doing where it actually helps with that. But I could see where people would be concerned that, that's another avenue and another outlet for marketing themes to folks. And, I already think the whole theme market is just bloated anyway, and just there's way too many of them. And I don't necessarily think that having another one is going to make any difference at all anyway. But I do think that it is a concern for folks that are relying on the .org repo, and that was their avenue for marketing their themes, that now there may be some other players and some other costs to playing in that game.
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to that, it's a lot of theme authors have to wait a while, and so but here's the thing, like we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, when you're playing in this ecosystem, Automatic kind of writes the rules, and you have to accept the rules of the ecosystem. Sallie, what's your take on this story?
I'm actually not sure how much of a threat it is to the freemium marketplace. I mean, it kind of depends on how things go, but so far they're making themes available free, and some of them are themes you can already get out of the repo, and we'll see where and when it might become an upsell. But it is not just Automatic's themes that are on WordPress.com, and so presumably, if you are somebody who has gone through the process of being approved on WordPress.com, your theme too can get exposure this way, so that it may benefit people other than just Automatic. And it may also make the transition easier for people who are migrating from WordPress.com to self-hosted WordPress. Because I know this has been an issue, various companies have been able to make premium themes available on WordPress.com, except they have to create a whole new different version of the theme. And so the theme that somebody paid for on WordPress.com, they've got to get a different version of it if they move to a self-hosted site. And some of the theme shops have a plan to give them a discount or a credit or something like that to make it easier. But I think this may be a way to make that a more seamless process, that when people are ready to graduate from WordPress.com to a self-hosted site, that it might make the transition easier. So, I think there can be benefits to the end user, which is supposedly what Jetpack and WordPress.com are about. And there may or may not be disadvantages to the developer, but I think the reason people get upset is that it seems like there's a double standard in effect.
Yeah, there is a little bit, possibly, but I mean, again, that's the rules of the game. That's how it goes. Things aren't always going to stay the same. The best thing to do is be proactive and stay in front of where you think the market is going, and not just depend on it to stay the same forever. I want to ask Jonathan, do you think Jetpack is doing a good job in being a bridge between people who are, on WordPress.com or going to self-hosting?
Well, that's a really difficult question. I really can't answer that, John. Basically, it's beyond my pay skill to pass comment on that. Just reflecting on the other bits, I really think this is driven by business more than anything. I got no data to support this, but WordPress.com, I think it's been in a kind of pincer movement, really. I think it's been quite effectively attacked by Squarespace and by Wix. In some ways, I haven't had to help somebody get a site up and running on WordPress.com for quite a while, but the last time I did it, it wasn't as smooth, and the individual was expecting more ability to customize. It was a friend that was helping, and they were looking just for a quick and easy blogging solution. but strange enough, they were disappointed. And I think, you know, I think that's what's driving it. And I think Automatic's had to put a lot of resources in the e-commerce side, haven't they? A lot of attention has had to be transferred, engineers and resources, which is going to be our next story. So in some ways, I think they're linked, because I think a lot of the resources had to go into the WooCommerce side that could have been focused on the main product. And I think the main product for Automatic is WordPress.com. And I think that's been, in features and usability, been falling behind some of its main competitors. What do you think, John?
No, I think that there is like a big effort to compete with things like Wix and Squarespace, and WordPress.com is the offering that competes directly with those. One last question I want to ask on this subject before we move to the next story, and I want to ask David this. Matt Mullenweg has suggested, or he just straight up said that like Jetpack and WooCommerce are multi-billion-dollar, you know, things waiting to happen here. It's just tapping into it. So do you, in your assessment, do you predict at some point that will Automatic, through either Jetpack or, you know, some other means, have some sort of paid marketplace where it's not just free themes or anything like that, but will they enter some sort of marketplace at some point in the future?
You mean beyond selling themes on WordPress.com and
yeah, beyond that,
and selling extensions on WooCommerce? Well, I think an obvious move to my mind is to put WooCommerce on WordPress.com to better compete with things like Squarespace Commerce and even Shopify to a certain extent. I think the big issue that you know, this ties into what Jonathan was saying of like how Wix and those sorts of competitors are really the thing that's eating into a lot of WordPress businesses, because Squarespace offers a fully featured and in some ways I hear more intuitive experience for a lot of people than WordPress with its widgets and all those other sort of strange interfaces that as WordPress community members we're used to, but that I don't think that an average person you pick up off the street is going to be like, oh yeah, I need to move some stuff around, I'll do a thing called a widget. So I think that whole onboarding experience is really a focus, and I think part of the reason that this theme continuity with WordPress.com is coming in is that like there is a thought that it could increase onboarding and get revenue, but like onboarding speed of like, I know how to do WordPress.com, I now know how to do WordPress.org because Jetpack. I think that is kind of a coherent story you could try to tell. I'm not sure how well it addresses the actual problems people have, but WordPress has the collective weight of everything beyond it. So I don't foresee Automatic getting involved in like, we are going to compete with ThemeForest sort of direction of going after a marketplace, but I definitely think them going harder after, we're trying to capture end user customers from the wider world and bring them into the WordPress ecosystem is obviously where they should be competing, because that's kind of what their core business has been as long as they've existed, I think.
No,
I doubt they would try, you know, creating a theme marketplace, because I don't think that's where they think the money is. You know, that that's such a crowded market, and you know, they basically were saying, well, here, you know, we have this e-commerce platform that's already very widely used, you know, this thing is a gold mine. And so, you know, I would expect more integration with WordPress.com and more expansion of that, rather than, you know, entering the already somewhat saturated and confusing theme marketplace.
I agree with Sallie on that, very much so. And somebody who's had experience like running an e-commerce business back 10 years ago when there wasn't like a self-hosted solution for that. Mm-hmm. The beauty of the hosted solution was that, you know, everything was all in one place and it all was built to work together. I didn't have to like know a lot about the environment and setting up plugins and all of the other complexities that go with a self-hosted e-commerce site. And I truly think what Sallie was just saying, the real focus is on the hosted solutions for these integrated solutions for folks. So you want to have something that competes with a Squarespace or a Shopify. So that hosted platform is better. The beauty of the WordPress part, though, is you can export that if you want to, and you can easily take it to a self-hosted solution if that's what you want. But I think most of the people that are going to be just starting up or wanting to open small e-commerce shops, their best bet is a hosted solution. I truly think most people are just going to struggle with the whole process of setting it up, SSL, Stripe integration, all of the things that you need a developer to do. And on a small scale startup e-commerce site, if you can provide a hosted solution where you just click a couple of buttons and it sets up your store, and you're more interested then in loading your products and other stuff than worrying about whether or not you've got your routing set up and everything else set up properly for it to work. Because I really enjoy, I had a Yahoo store. So this was back when there really wasn't anything else available. And it made it really easy to run my business. It managed the inventory, it managed the whole e-commerce aspects and all of the payments and the shipping and everything. And I think that's where things are headed for this.
No, definitely. Go ahead.
Yeah, the one thing I just wanted to throw in kind of in response to that is I do think that WordPress.com is trying to sell more and more features to WordPress.org users with Jetpack. That's kind of how I see that play going. But I do think the WordPress.com marketing to the wide world is the bigger, greener field for them to go after, is like beat Squarespace to the next feature that people find really compelling as far as how to get online, because the vast number of businesses aren't online because it's too expensive or too much of a hassle. And so lowering that barrier to entry, making onboarding easier and more comprehensive. There was a lot of excitement when 2017 came out that it's actually focused at businesses and provides some of the features that most business sites for small to medium businesses want, because that has not really been a thing that we've focused on in the community. It's like, let's add the new shiny that, takes people who already do WordPress and makes their job a little easier, but we've not focused as much on bringing new people into the products.
No, well said. Definitely. That brings us to our next story, which is WooCommerce. The next release is not going to be 2.7. It's going to be 3.0. And the reason for that is basically there was a bug in the way that it was handling timestamps. In a lot of cases, developers need to get a UTC timestamp or a ISO 8601 datetime string, and so they needed to change the way that was being handled. In addition, they're moving to semantic versioning on this version of WooCommerce. So anyone that's using versioned template files that are at 2.7, they may need to change them to 3.0.0. David, thoughts on WooCommerce changing the versioning system in this case?
Yeah, personally, I'm very up on the idea of semantic versioning. It's one of the things that I get why WordPress refuses to do it. For those who don't know, semantic versioning is you have a major number, you have a minor number, and you have a patch number. Patches are bug fixes. Minor numbers are for new features on top, and majors are for like, we broke stuff on your old version, you actually will have to do something on this update step. So WordPress doesn't have major versions because we try to maintain compatibility always, and so there's like a kind of coherent story there. But I had the experience with WooCommerce, I think at 2.3 or something, that a site broke because the templates changed or whatever it was, and that is a troubling experience for the client who doesn't know what's going on or why. They were, I promised them they could typically just update plugins and it wouldn't be a problem. And in this case it was, which kind of ties into the theme for the rest of the show. But so I think being clear about when you're breaking backwards compatibility and being very intentional about it empowers you to both actually break it sometimes, which I think kind of kneecaps WordPress at times. And it also lets you lets people better understand what your numbers are, because semantic versioning is the most common way that software is versioned. And so people are used to this and are a little confused by the way WordPress rolls up always from 3.9 to 4.0 for whatever reason. So I think it's a great move. There's not a good reason other than, hey, WordPress does it. We're a WordPress project that it was, I think, the way it was. So I think it's a great move.
Jackie, thoughts on this and things to look out for possibly?
Well, I think it makes a lot of sense to do versioning the way everybody else is doing. It makes it a lot easier to understand what's going on, and especially when a major version comes out, you know, you need time to prepare for that. You need time to make sure that you don't have any compatibility issues. There's a lot of people that write plugins that go on top of this, so they need advance notice. They need to plan for that, and I think that that makes a lot of sense to do. And having, you know, what appears to be a minor version change, switch, some major thing or break something on your site is a big issue, especially when you're talking about an e-commerce install that is generating income, right? So it's not as if my bio picture on the about page is now, you know, not centered properly because of this update. It's like my shopping cart's not working. We're not getting orders. I can't ship orders. Those are like big problems to have. So I think, you know, putting a more formalized process to that makes a lot of sense.
No, I totally agree. And, you know, definitely like having a standard versioning system will make it easier for people to judge, you know, the people that understand the versioning system, that they'll be able to judge like, hey, like this is just like a, you know, a patch, or this is like something where I'm actually going to need to test everything and make sure that things are still going to work if I, you know, update this, you know, update WooCommerce. Hey, we got a new guest here, Lee.
Well, howdy ho.
Introduce yourself, Lee, for people who don't know who you are.
Hey guys, I'm Lee from the WP Innovator podcast. 22 minutes late because of the time zone shift.
Oh, well, there you go.
I thought we all started at 5, and then I was like, ah, crap.
That's right. Y'all did.
You guys changed the time, not us.
Oh.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, la, 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 la. And then, like,
Yeah, well,
that's because we're backwards here. We're, you know, we're spending, I don't know how much resources twice a year changing clocks for absolutely no reason.
Oh, they change clocks in Britain. It's just at a different time.
Just in a few weeks' time, yeah.
Oh, well, then you're wrong, too.
Yeah, sorry. Anyway, I'm here now. Sorry, guys.
Cool. I was just going to ask Sallie, like, her thoughts on the WooCommerce. They're changing the versioning to 3.00. Some of the people are asking, plugin developers saying, hey, we need longer time on the release candidate versions of this. You know, any thoughts on this, Sallie?
Well, I agree that it just makes a lot more sense to use the semantic versioning because, you know, I have several times explained to people from outside the WordPress community the bizarre versioning system that WordPress uses and why, you know, you can have a major release that's like 3.9 because it just doesn't make sense to anyone else. What I'd really like to see WooCommerce do is address, like, instead of telling people to modify their darn templates so that you have, you know, 38 templates in your child theme that you need to update or revise when there's a new version out, telling people, look, we have all these nice hooks in WooCommerce. You can just, you know, hook the changes that you need into it and then leave our templates as they are so that whenever you upgrade WooCommerce, you get the new templates and you don't have all these objections. And you know, the only time that it's going to worry is if they decide we're going to, you know, deprecate this particular hook and put something else in there instead.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. Definitely WooCommerce has a lot of documentation on their hooks. And that's one of the things that I do like about WooCommerce, the two things, that it is easy to template and it is easy to hook. So yeah, definitely. Lee, any thoughts on the 3.0 versioning of WooCommerce? Yes.
I'm just excited. Well, excited is actually a bit of a lie. I'm just happy that there is plenty of time for us to test things. It's one of the biggest. It's actually the most expensive upgrade for any client that I do is a WooCommerce upgrade. There's so many things to do. Everybody wants to change the look. So I think Sallie was alluding to the template files and everything. And for some reason, over the last few changes, every time I've ever done a WooCommerce update, there seems to be some silly little change in the template files that screws a whole lot of stuff up for us. It's like, I don't know, one end div or something like that has just changed and it screws stuff up. But yeah, having time to having time to test everything, etc. I'm very happy about that. But WooCommerce itself, I got to admit, whenever I go to press the update button, I am bricking it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So, I mean, but that's good to know. I mean, and definitely it's like why you want to have, if you're running any kind of WooCommerce shop, you don't necessarily want to have just like your marketing intern or your college kid or whatever, like hitting update or whatever. You want to have like a trained professional updating stuff, someone who realizes like the impact stuff could have, because and definitely in something like WooCommerce, any type of e-commerce where you have different things, different payment gateways and different types of plugins set up, those things rely on the site and WooCommerce and the theme and everything to work together in coordination. Jonathan, any final thoughts on this before we go to our break? You're on mute. Unmute.
You're on mute. You're still on mute.
I'm sorry about that, folks. No, not really, John, because I leave it for you to do, don't I?
I guess so. Anyway, yeah, definitely. So we're going to roll into our main topic. I think this is going to be an excellent show. When we come back, we're going to be talking the biggest mistake that we each ever made on a web project. What did we screw up? Stay tuned after the break. We're coming back from the break, and I'm just so in anticipation of this topic. What was the biggest mistake you ever made on a web project? So, hey, we'll start with new guy here, last to join, Lee. What's the biggest balls up mistake you ever made on a project?
The problem is I've actually made a lot of mistakes. So I'm not 100% sure which one would be the absolute.
Well, just tell us all of them. There you go. Just tell us the ones that are awesome.
I mean, there's the classics, isn't there? Like, I'm going to go ahead and update this site without backing it up because I think everything will be fine and I can't be bothered to back it up. But I know I should back it up. I'm still going to press update, and then the whole thing screws up. And it was there was 50 websites. It was a multi-site as well. So I was an idiot for not backing it up. So there's things like that, and I've done that at least twice. Yeah, you'd think once. Yeah, okay, fair enough, idiot. But twice, I've done it twice. That was like 2 years ago now, thankfully. And then I guess the only other thing on a web project would be maybe about 2 years ago, I made a whole lot of assumptions about what a client wanted. I shared with them BuddyPress and showed them how it all worked because it was the classic, I would like a Facebook clone. Sorry, I feel like I'm going to burst into tears.
That should have been your first clue right there,
that was
right?
my first clue. I took the freaking project on. I trusted the client to look at the theme we were going to implement. John's just jumping off a cliff over there, Jonathan. I just kind of assumed they would look at everything I sent them and that they would understand that everything was all going to be fine and dandy and do everything that they wanted it to do. And I got everything, started to get everything together, and before long it fell apart. They were like, where's the video upload? Where's this, that, and the other of Facebook? And I kept saying, guys, Facebook has $1 billion, and they've been building this for years. And our agreement and our contract clearly states that we're just installing this plugin, and this plugin to give you the features that you agree you're going to have from those. But it just all fell apart with things like, you're the expert and you should have told, and we're not technical. And I was just like, I'm going to have to walk away from this. So I had to. So yes, there's either not backing up when you just know you should do. And then the other thing is just making big fat assumptions about what a client wants without getting any decent documentation. There you go. 2 mistakes. 3, 4, 5, many.
Oh, no, that's good. But so what things did you change in your process like after each of these?
Well, now I back up. I actually So even though we've got backup with all of the hosting companies that we have, and that saved my life a few times, what we also do now is use Duplicator Pro everywhere, and we actually back up everyone's sites on a nightly basis to our Google Drive or Dropbox, depending on where we're doing, and we also do it to the clients as well. So that gives us 24 hours at the worst to be able to recover someone. Because I've always thought as well, what if the host goes bust? If the host goes bust and they're backing everything up, I don't know, what's the plan then? So, so that's the one thing we learned there. And obviously, if I'm going to do a backup, I mean, we've since moved to WP Engine, so I just do a quick snapshot before I do anything, and I always test on staging now and all that jazz. So those are the things I did there. And then with regards to the web projects, we don't take any web project on without a full spec, full brief, and we create something called a user story. So instead, it's like a website specification document, but we just kind of make it fun, and we do it as a story with chapters, and we establish who the key people are. We give them all a stupid name and a funny backstory, and then we actually create this kind of book together that we all agree is what's going to be built. That enables us to define what the final price is going to be. It helps us to tell the developers what they're going to build, etc. So that when the client then comes to me and says, hey, where's the product export feature? I'll say, well, the book we wrote together, there's not a chapter about exporting your products. So let's create that new chapter and quote on it. So they're the two things we implemented, and that saved my bacon a lot.
No, I love that you made them stories and not necessarily feature requests, and that you have documentation.
Well, the thing is that I got to admit, I'm lazy and I don't read boring stuff. So like if someone gives me a product specification document, I lose the will to live. If somebody gives me a funny document that's like a story about a guy called Reginald and a lady called Lizzie, and it's just silly and funny, but it also covers what they're going to do, I'm going to read that and have a laugh with it. And I'm also going to know what I need to build, because I can then quickly bullet point the core features. We're going to tell the story about how they register and go and check their email and make a coffee and then click on the link, and just inject a little bit of humor throughout it. So it makes it fun for us and also fun for the client.
Excellent. David, when it comes to biggest mess ups that you've done, let's hear it.
Yeah. So I was thinking there are kind of two classes of mistakes. There are the ones that had the most not positive consequences for me personally, and they're also the most relatable ones. So I think the most relatable ones are things like I've definitely edited a plugin in production, and then I think I actually did this once. It was on my own site, which helps, but updated a plugin in a way that white screened the site when I didn't have FTP credentials close at hand and couldn't immediately edit the file. So I've done that. And I've also, I think more than once, I have had to rely on my host backup, as Lee was saying, because I didn't actually run my backup, or when I did have a backup running, but I didn't know how to restore the backup I was running, which is a whole separate but valuable thing to do. Know how to restore your backups in addition to having something that you think is a backup.
Amen, brother.
Yeah, because that one will bite you, and it'll bite you at the worst possible time, which is when you're like, oh no, we're good, we're backed up. And then you're like, oh no, well, let's hope that the 24-hour ago one that my host happens to have saved is good enough. So those have definitely happened. I mentioned the WooCommerce. I don't think I updated that in production. Fortunately, we had a staging site where I found out that this update was going to break all the templates. But to pull back a little bit, I do think one of the biggest mistakes I've made on my own web projects is not having a clear sense of what I was building, why I was building it, and how I would make money doing it, which is much more, it's less of the small, change a process. But it's basically the way Fred and I, who we run WPShout together, the way we got started was this business that we had. I'm going to put business in air quotes. Business that we had that was just an idea and a dream, and thought that if we build it, they will come and give us lots of money. So I think that happens a lot online, and it's a much bigger problem. And so it's actually less memorable. But that is kind of the most profound mistake I've ever made, is just dumping hundreds, if not thousands of hours into things that I thought were cool. And, you know, the world was like, yeah, that's okay. I'm not going to come back.
Oh man, you've all been there. Definitely, definitely. So what changes did you make in your processes like after you made each of those mistakes? I think we touched on backups, but you know, those two things, what did you change after?
Yeah, I mean, I think trying to restore the backups is good. And I think on the broader thing, you know, never do it live, never do it on production. You know, there's a reason they call it cowboy coding, and it's not because cowboys are valorous and brave. It's because they're wimps who make mistakes and die alone in the desert. So don't do those things. And yeah, I mean, for the actual like business problems, I think I can't say that I'm great at it or anything, but I'm a lot more thoughtful about why I'm undertaking a project and what I expect to get out of it. And so I have hobby projects that I just do because they're fun for me. I've got tons of board games, which are just a money hole and time suck, but I love them. But I'm very clear that that is a hobby and something that I'm not going to get any money from. And, you know, doing that with programming projects that I start on is helpful. I think being intentional, like reading about lean startup, MVP, all that stuff, that can help with the broader problem of creating something no one actually cares for. But it's a really, really hard thing to go and implement in a new business idea that you're excited about, because it's so much more appealing to make the same mistakes again, building what you want and not knowing if anyone else does.
No, that's definitely good advice. You know, never make changes on the live site. And when it comes to you know, having a business idea, make sure that you're building something that other people want, and be clear, you know, what your business model is for sure. Jackie, I wanted to ask you, you know, any big mistakes that you've ever made on a web project, and what do you learn from them?
Yeah, I've got two for the web project, but I want to start off with the first one that was before the web, right? So
Okay.
just for some why I'm obsessed with backups. Okay, so years ago, before there was even, you know, well, let's just say back maybe in the 90s somewhere. Okay, I had, you know, local computer network, and I had a little server thing that was stored everything on there, and I was backing that up to another device, and they were all in the same place, and my server failed. And when I went to restore the backup drive failed at the exact same time. But like the unit didn't want to work. And the unit was discontinued. I couldn't find another one. A week went by, and I ended up losing, I guess, about 6 weeks worth of work that I could not get back. And it was very painful. It was really painful. I had done a lot of work. It was a lot of internal stuff that I had done, and I lost it all. And ever since then, I've been, you know, really good about redundant backups, and never want to feel the pain of having to do 6 weeks worth of work again for nothing. So that was kind of like my intro into the backup horror story that was. And it was really, when I went to restore and it didn't work and the drive failed, I was like, how could this have happened? You know, and it was, but it really did. And so it does happen to people. You don't realize, you don't think it's going to. So now my new way is, you know, I have a backup here, a NAS server that backs up my Mac every hour, right? And then I have another one of those that's like a portable one that I keep in a safe. And I am reminded on my Mac every 2 weeks to take that out and do another time machine backup with that one. So like there's always something there. And then I have like a crash plan that backs up to the cloud, like all of my important stuff that there. So that's like my scenario that I will do. And I'm even gone as far as if I'm going out of town, I might take that backup thing out of the safe and bring it to my parents' house or something and just leave it there until I get back. So that's my obsession with backups. But probably on the web projects, I have to think, probably one of the funniest ones. And, you know, anytime I have to do anything with host DNS, domains or anything, I feel like somebody's asking me to change live electrical sockets, you know, just with bare hands and just go in there and do it. Because I feel like at any moment, something's just going to explode. And I think one of the ones that I did was I changed somebody's name servers and did not take a screenshot of what their records were. like their MX records and everything else. And then of course you go over to the new place where the new name server, and you don't have any of that. And then when you go back to the original one, it's not there anymore. So I think that was one of the ones, fortunately, that was Google that they were using. And that's a pretty standard one that you can go back and fill in. But it was a really good reminder to me that, you know, it's dangerous in there. Whenever you're in there, you have to do anything. So it's like, that's my biggest challenge every time, is I have to do any kind of records changes and things. The other thing
I've done that, by the way. If it makes you feel better, I've done exactly that.
Cool. The other thing was, I would think, like, before version control and before really, you know, using Git to push my changes and things, just relying on, you know, SFTP or FTP is actually just copying the files to the wrong site, because I'm using like an FTP program. I'm using like Forklift, and I got everything there, and it's already like keeps the last one open that I was using. And I just like grab this and drag it over, and then realize, oh my God, this is another client site that I've just uploaded all of this stuff to. And, you know, fortunately there was a backup, right? So I could go back, but I think that's like that moment your heart stops when you just realize what you just did, and you're trying to figure out what is the fastest way that I can undo this. And I think that's like the scariest part, is just like, having everything so convenient the way it is right now, where, you know, you can easily just open up things and upload things and drag things, and then not paying attention to what folder you actually are dragging things to. So those were my two big ones, I think, from just a technical perspective. And then of course, I totally agree with everybody else, as you know, not scoping projects adequately before you get started, and then realizing halfway through, you know, you're not going to be able to deliver what the client is expecting, and then having to go back and grovel and regroup and try to figure a way out of it. I think we probably all have done that.
I think everyone just needs a group hug. And John, you're on mute, by the way. But I think this is very cathartic, and it feels like therapy for web developers right now, as we're all just confessing the terrible things that we've done, and we're all like nodding, yep, done that too. Oh, and I've done that as well. Sorry, John. Anyway, back to you.
Oh, no, totally. I sense like a common theme is making sure that you have like backups, and like David said, make sure that you walk through the backup to process to where you can restore it. It's a good idea to, like, you know, practice that. And Jackie is super great. She's got redundant backups everywhere. She's even keeping one in the safe. I do know people that have like 5 or 6 backups of everything. And if it makes you feel any better, Jackie, I have done the exact same thing with the FTP. And it's usually comes when I'm multitasking or something like that, or trying to do too many things at once, and like and then you FTP to the wrong, wait, that's the wrong site. But yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why isn't this showing up? Oh, I put it in the wrong folder.
Sallie, what horror stories do you have for us today?
Okay. Well, you know, I've been thinking about this topic because we're actually having our meetup about it tomorrow. And there happened to be an article posted on the web recently about, you know, some people sharing their mistakes. And it was interesting to me how many of the mistakes that they listed were the technical mistakes. Now, those can be pretty heart-stopping. And, you know, I had a situation recently, which is to say within the last year or two, but I was building a site for somebody. Their old site was on WordPress.com. And if you've ever looked at the DNS settings on WordPress.com, they're kind of funky. And what I often do on a client site is I'll create a forwarder that's like, you know, webmaster@clientdomain.com, so that I can set up things like their, you know, WordPress.com connection, or their whatever that I might need to set up. And then, you know, later we can point that at whoever needs to get it if I'm not doing ongoing work. But of course, in order to be able to do that, that has to be a case where they're running the MX through the right place. And looking at the DNS panel in WordPress.com was very confusing. And so it was not clear there that all their mail was actually being handled through, you know, Office 365. So I actually went and set up this forward, and then everything broke. and the client was like having complete hysterics. And I was up at, and it wasn't that difficult to fix. But it was just, it's like ever since then, I have been extremely careful to inquire of my clients where their email is run through, so that I don't make that mistake again, because, for most businesses, your email is pretty mission critical, often more so than your website.
I just wanted to interject here that, Sallie, that was specifically about communication. In two ways, right? It's about email and it's about communicating with your client about what you need was. And I heard this in Lee's thing too, which is like making sure that you communicate clearly with the client what you're building and why, and all that stuff. And I just think this is a thing that in general as a class, developers are a little behind at. And, in general, people drawn to the web are like, they like computers. They don't like talking to people as much. So
yes,
right.
I think the big pitfall in this case was like thinking I knew something I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, did I remember to ask about it? Although my biggest mistakes have all been basically mistakes of discovery, mistakes of not realizing what I was getting into, mistakes of, I think about my worst client from hell experiences. One of them was for a not web project, and one of them was for a web project. But in both cases, the problem was not checking the prospective client out. And so in the first case, it turned out this guy was a fairly well-known con artist. And what he would do is that he would, hire contractors to create things that would help him con investors out of their money, and then not pay the contractors. So, we all started getting bad checks, and then only then did I think to Google the guy's name and discovered that, oh yeah, other people had this experience. And, the good news is we were mostly able to get our money, primarily thanks to the clever intervention of my then fiance, now husband. But in the next case, I was in a position where I needed money. The prospective client had mentioned having worked with a couple of different companies that I knew and had no reason to think badly of. And I was too dumb to call them and find out about, like, why didn't this work out? And yeah, it turned out to be a complete cluster. Mm-hmm. And so this is, so like check up, do your homework on your prospective of clients, and definitely do your homework on your prospective projects.
Hey, can I just say one more thing? Just on that note. Okay. Just yesterday, this is a perfect example of like not having all the information that you need. Is you think when you go in, and we're back to the DNS electrocution story, right? So you think when you go there that the way these things work inside is all the same, right? You would think that it is, right? So yesterday I had to set up a Mailgun records for a client, right? And they're hosting with some hosting company that I don't regularly ever see or use, right? So I go in there and I'm like, oh, okay, this is great. I got all my 2 little things I need to put in. And I get there and I realize that there is no field for the host name to be put in, right? So turns out if you want to do it, you have to email them or get a live chat and then exchange this information with somebody for them to set it up manually. And of course, this ended up taking an hour of my time where I thought it was a 5-minute deal. And it just reminded me that you get these things, go check it out. Make sure you can log in. Number one, the client gives you a login and password and you don't look at it for 2 days, and then you go to do the work and you realize you can't get in. But then the other one is can you actually accomplish what you need to in there with the tools that they're providing you? And there's nothing worse than having to do this. So yesterday, I give them the information. They set it all up. They said, oh, give it an hour and it all should be propagated. Everything should be fine. I go and I look, and they left off the first 4 characters of the string I gave them, right? So then I had to start a whole new chat, start all over again and say, you were just helping me. Here's the string. You forgot this part. Could you please put it in the beginning? Please give me 5 to 6 minutes to work on this for you. The whole thing, you're doing a chat, you're waiting. And then they probably come back and say, yes, it is done. So literally, this took an hour of my time to accomplish this. That's something that I had said, oh, no problem, I'll take care of it, and it can be done in a few minutes. So it's like, I think one of our biggest challenges is when people have domain registration services that you're not familiar with or don't know how they work, and apparently they are all different. It's like whatever somebody wakes up one morning and says, this is what our interface is going to look like, that's just what they decide to build it as. So some places have the fields you need, some don't. Some have extra protection where you can't enter that stuff. So anyway, that was my point. Just yesterday that happened to me, and I was like wanting to bang my head on the desk. Why did I agree to do this? And, it's like no good deed goes unpunished.
I wanted to follow up with that, Jackie. I actually have been doing a bunch of migrations. Some people that I used to work with, they were getting out of the business, and they're asked me to move some of their clients to new hosting and stuff like that. So, and plus I moved another client from another person that I used to work with, but. So I've done like 6 site migrations in the last 3 weeks, and 5 of those included email. And I was just telling Lee in chat that one company, one organization, they had like a little gap like on their email because something was off in the DNS. And like you were saying, every DNS place is different. Like it'll be different on GoDaddy and different on Media Temple and different in Bluehost, and they're all completely different. So you really, really, really have to research like how to enter the DNS records, because, and especially when it comes to mail records like the SPF and the DKIM like records, those might be totally different because if they don't have the space to put it in, you got to figure out how to write it. Yeah, so fortunately, all mine ended with a happy story. Everybody ended up with their email in the end. Everything ended on a good note. But with DNS, it is so important. Do not underestimate it. And moving email is kind of a pain. And with Sallie, I wanted to say too, when you were dealing with the person who was kind of a con artist, what changed in your process? After that, did you start screening people more closely?
I definitely always would look up a client after that. I mean, these days I get most people through referral, so it's a little less chancy. But yeah, it was just kind of like, yes, Google is your friend. See what you can find out, and don't be in such a hurry that you fail to check references, because yeah, if somebody says, and I've learned that if somebody had a bad experience with one person, it may be their previous contractor, because people don't know very much about how to hire somebody. If somebody's had a bad experience with 5 or 6 people, you start to think maybe it's the client who's the problem.
Yeah, one thing that I've done too, along those lines, is I always, if somebody contacts me through a contact form or anyway, I will Google them before I even get back to them to make sure that they're legitimate. I know that I know of other developers who have been burned by people who are scamming. You want to make sure that they're legit. Another scam that I want to mention that's out there, some people may be aware of it, but I know people who have been burned by this, is if somebody texts you or emails you and says, can you handle website, this and that, and I'm hearing impaired, that is a scam. It is a credit card scam. They will if they ask you if you take credit cards, just say no. I either do PayPal, do a check, or cash. Because what they do is they have somebody else's card. They'll overpay you. They'll ask for a refund. They'll pocket the difference. And then the entire part that gets sent to fraud, you are responsible for. So whenever you get those texts or emails, just throw them in the trash. Definitely. And Google people. Jonathan, and I wanted to ask you, what's the biggest mistakes you've ever made on a web project? I want to hear this.
The one that came to mind as our panelists were their past sins were coming to light. Well, I had a client, they're still in business, so I'm going to be a bit careful here. And it's a regional, quite a substantial regional business. And I met the founder of the joint founder, and they seemed really, really nice. We hit it off, and they want an additional e-commerce solution. And I thought, yeah, great. And this was just before I got into WordPress. It was around 2.930, and I was still using Expression Engine. And I found a local developer, because this was going to be out of my pay grade, the custom development. But I found a really good local developer who was experienced in Expression Engine, which was lucky, but he was a top-notch guy. And so we go on to the first meetings, and prices agreed, and looks really a fabulous project. So off we go, start knocking it off, and we do some of the functionality, and we fill in everything with Latin, you know, as you do. And we get called to a meeting to discuss the progress. So it's about 11:30 in the morning. So off we go to the office of this company, me and my developer subcontractor. And the founder is there, plus the CEO, and I really get on with the CEO. We start discussing things, and she's drunk. The founder's drunk at 11:30, right, John? And I'm looking at the CEO, and he's looking at me, and I'm looking at her, and she starts swearing at me, John. What's all this buzz, buzz, buzz stuff on the website? It should be English. I'm looking at
Lorem ipsum dollar et cibet. No.
She continues to swear at me, and I said, sorry, you're not talking to me like that. And I looked at the CEO, we got to end this meeting, and I'll give you a call in the afternoon. We walked, my developer was hiding underneath the table. He was just, you can see he was just trying to go away. And I kind of dragged him out with me out the office. That was.
You drove a client to the bottle. Was that? Is this the biggest?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I thought you would say that.
Man. So okay. So here's a question. How did your processes change after that experience?
Yeah, got a tip here, folks. Not obviously, if it's a small project, do what John said. And Sallie, look them up on Google. If it's a bigger job, obviously do Google search, but then use your LinkedIn, because I found it really, with a client we're working with already, John, I've already done some LinkedIn research. You'll find, if you've got a reasonable large network on LinkedIn, you normally find somebody that's done some experience or work with somebody else, and then I just email them or phone them up saying, is it possible to have a quick chat? Do you know this person? Can you give us some background? Because I'm going to be doing some major work, and you'd be amazed what people will tell you.
Guys, I've literally never checked up on a client. I'm just saying. I'm learning something today. Carry on, John.
Yes, well, I was fortunate.
If they got a band, so you'd be, oh yeah, I know them. It all comes out, John.
Yes, well, it's. I had a case where someone contacted me who, he happened to sort of mention an existing longtime client of mine. And so I mentioned him to this longtime client, and he phoned me and said, look, I got to tell you something about this guy. And so I gracefully deflected that project elsewhere.
Good.
There you go. Yeah, definitely. No, I always, okay. So, well, okay, I guess I have a couple little stories here when it comes to my biggest mistakes. I'll start with a technical one. This was early on in my career. I was doing a site for there's an agency I used to subcontract for back east. I don't really do anything for him at this point in time, but they were doing a site for a very large media site. They're in the top 20,000 sites in the world. You probably, nobody here would probably know the site, but anyway, they had a lot of traffic. One of the features that they wanted, well, there was two mistakes. One, I agreed to do the whole site for like $2,000, and this project ended up taking like literally like 9 or 10 months, and it just dragged on forever. So yeah, so that was one mistake. But the second mistake was they had about 65,000 posts on the site at the time, and I did not know they had a feature where they wanted to kind of like click on a thing where it's like, here's the top rated sites of the day, the week, and then of all time. So what I didn't realize at the time was when you're doing a database query on 65,000 posts, that can really like, bog down your site or even crash it. And so we built it. We were like, oh yeah, we're good to go, and then, they came back and they were like, oh, hey, we spent a lot of money on this, and now like it doesn't work, and and it crashes the site. So lesson learned. That one was my fault. It was my mistake. Yeah, I know. Lee's holding up 2 fingers. Yeah, definitely. So definitely we could not wait to get to the end of that, and they went and had their site like done by somebody else. But honestly, there was a lot of mistakes with that one, and how I changed my process after that. To tightly define the scope of like what you're doing before you go and promise like a bunch of stuff, and research. Don't just blindly say like, okay, I can do that. Actually like give advice to find out like if that's going to work, and then give advice. The second mistake, a project that I did was also early in my career. I think this is probably the first site that I actually did for money. Okay, this was actually before that one, and it was like for a company. They are a brick and mortar company. They sell stuff or whatever, and it was a family business. And the people who approached me was not. It was like the daughter of the owner and her husband, and then I also talked to the son of the owner or whatever. And they're like, hey, yeah, we really want, to do a website, because they had no website. Their business is doing fine. They had no website, but they're like, okay, yeah. And I quoted them some ridiculously low number, like $500 or something like that. Cause I was like, oh, that's about what a website should cost. Right. So, I made so many mistakes on this one. And I didn't communicate with them what I was doing. I basically took it in my head to build them like put all their products like on the site, which ended up being everything that they could possibly sell. The site was really good. I mean, as far as like that, it just like, I spent way too much time, like months too long on this site. And then at the end, the actual stakeholder, because I thought the people I was talking to were the stakeholders, the actual stakeholder, the guy who writes the checks, like appeared and was like, oh, like, hey, like, are you done with this yet or whatever? And so I just basically just pushed out live. Like at that point, it's just like, this is good enough. But so many things that I learned from this are, find out who the real stakeholders are. If you're not talking to the person that writes the checks, or even if this other person is writing the check, make sure like who's actually invested in this project, because it turns out he doesn't even care. I mean, they don't even care. The site's still there. The site's doing really good, but as it turns out, they don't really need a website at all to generate business. So, I mean, there's zero interest in it. So there's that. And 2, communicate with the clients. Don't go dark, which I didn't go dark on projects like after that one at all. But I had to learn. And then, don't do a bunch of stuff for free, which is like what I ended up doing on this project, because I wanted it to be a really good job and I wanted it to do well, which it still is doing, but it's like I did it all for like a ridiculously low price and tossed in a bunch of stuff that they really didn't appreciate. So that's a bunch of lessons there. Yeah. Tell you. Lee or David, Oh,
Go ahead, Lee.
Oh, me. Oh, sorry. Okay. Well, I was going to reiterate the whole thing for free. You know, sometimes when you go ahead and think, oh, I'm going to add this in as extra value. Number one, like you said, John, the client probably ain't going to appreciate that. But number two, if you do add something in, you're adding in another point of failure. And I've done it so many times, and then it all screws up, and I then just look like the bad guy. And also, me and Jackie were having a conversation. You said your first was $500. Mine was $200. I think everybody needs their stupidly low-priced website to learn the lesson of, oh, okay, this is how much a website should really cost. David, I think you were going to say something, were you?
Yeah, and you just started it, Lee, which is, I think, the most general advice for people starting out in this kind of work is charge more. And I think that looks two ways. One is, in general, when you're starting out, fixed price estimate is always going to be super low. And it also looks like just make sure that you think about what value you're providing. I know when I started out, I was like, yeah, no, I was working $12 an hour jobs, and now I'm going to get $30 an hour. And you don't make a living that way, it turns out. So just think about what value you're providing for these people, more so than you're worried about oh, how great this jump in hourly rate is, because the overhead of being, as almost all of us are, independent consultant kind of people, is a lot higher than it is when you're working hourly at a convenience store or whatever it is.
that's a great point, David. I mean, that's the thing and that's a mistake I think a lot of us make when we first start out, is we judge everything by what we were earning before. Because I mean, when I first started doing this, I think the most that I earned per hour before was maybe $20 or $20 and change. So, $30 is a lot of money, but you cannot survive on that if you're an independent consultant. You can't do it. Because of taxes, downtime, you don't work 40 hours of billable hours a week ever. Definitely not consistently every single week. So definitely just want to go around the room. Any other final thoughts on this?
Can I tell a little story?
Yeah, please jump in.
I had a client that was referred to me from a copywriter that I was using, and the client had been a good client for the copywriter. So we have a meeting, and she walks in, and she's this 6 foot tall model, and she was into motorbikes as well. So she always wore kind of black leather. She comes in the office, right, and she's doing some demo or something at some conference, and she needed this job really done quick. Everything was always quick with this lady, and she'd been let down by a developer who I knew, and I took on the job because I gave it wasn't a big job, and she agreed, and it went fine, and she gave me more and more work, and we had more and more meetings, which I really, really liked, because she would turn up in more black leather. And
Is this a rated R story, Jonathan? I gotta ask.
No,
I'm really worried where this is going.
No, it's just my stupidity, folks. So I enjoyed the little chats. She had a full-time boyfriend, and they used to roam around on motorbikes. And then she started not to be down on price. There were always rush jobs at the last minute. So she I get a phone call or email, and she said, "Oh, Jonathan, you need this done now, blah, blah, blah." And then you give her a quote. She said, "Can you reduce it?" And I did. And then I found out from some associates she had a $3 million house in Truckee. And I bumped up, as soon as I started bunning up the prices, she disappeared, folks. So I no longer have meetings with this model in leather.
Why is it that people with so much money Maybe that's why they have so much money. They knock you down on price. Because like I've had that experience where you work with someone who advertises themselves as a super rich online millionaire selling the lifestyle and everything, and they need you to do a few things for them that they obviously cannot do, and yet they want to bash you down on the price. It really blows my mind. They're like, hey, I'll help you earn £1 million. Look at me on the beach. Then you say, yeah, that'll cost you $60. And you just hear this. I'm like, really? Why?
I
Sorry,
have
that's my
found
rant.
that people who need to earn their living are more respectful of my need to earn mine.
It's an interesting observation.
It was the leather that done me, folks.
We were worried where this was going, by the way.
No, I think you make an excellent point, Sally. It's people, that earn their money and work for it. They kind of are respectful. So I think it's really like how you come off like initially is it sets the tone. If you come off, if you approach like a prospect or whatever, like I really, really need this money, even if you don't say that verbally, if your body language and everything in you like says that, they're going to sense that and lowball you. And so you have to know your worth and internalize that. You really have to do that and realize that even people who are just starting this, and maybe you don't necessarily think you're a great developer, the fact of the matter is there are a lot of business owners out there that don't know anything about technology. And so even if you can help them, that's worth something. So, price accordingly. Any final thoughts anyone has, or no?
John, I was just going to follow up with what you were just saying, which is the thing about not only do you have a lot of knowledge that you don't even think is knowledge, you know what WordPress is if you're listening to this podcast. That's virtually guaranteed. And there are business owners out there who don't even know that. And to add on to that, you can and do find clients out there who will respect you and for that knowledge and that expertise and will pay you for it. They respect your need, as Sallie said, to make a living, and they will be happy to pay you for it. And so it is okay sometimes. I think we haven't dwelled a lot on like bad clients, but sometimes clients just aren't going to work out. And sometimes the best thing you can do is just cut your losses quick and just say, look, I'll give you your money back. This is just not going to work out for us. It's already, you aren't communicating with me, or I can't communicate with you, or whatever it is. And just like, get out of there. We've talked a lot about stories where we messed up, but some clients just are going to mess up in ways that aren't acceptable to you, whether that is like not respecting your need to make money or not respecting your time or anything like that. And so I think, valuing yourself is a big part of this. You will make mistakes in this process, as all of us have talked about. You'll break the production site. You'll make everything look ugly when you accidentally click the wrong button. Like, those things will happen. That's part of being a professional, though. It's how you handle those things and how people treat you when you handle those things that really matters.
No, it's a great point, David. They can't be a bad client if you don't accept them as a client. So sometimes it's better just to deflect them towards somebody else.
That's mean.
Your worst enemy.
That's
not
That's
mean.
just mean.
That's not mean. You send them toward your enemies.
So I'm like, hey, John,
I usually just say,
Denwood.
I can't think of anybody right now that I could refer you to. I usually say something like that rather than refer them to somebody else, that even if it's somebody that I would consider like a competitor or something. I basically just say, I can't really think of anybody I could refer you to. And that is honestly the truth.
Yeah, if I think they're going to be terrible, I don't want to send them to a colleague. But in some cases, it's sort of like, well, this person just has a really tiny budget. Okay, I can say, well, for a small amount of money, you can get this very limited thing. And I know somebody who does this very limited kind of setup for you, and maybe that's where you should start. But yeah, if they really seem like they're going to, it's like, yeah, go to Upwork, go away.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, people per hour is a place I recommend people go to as well. If there's a limited budget, or they're not going to be for me, or I know that it would be bad to recommend them to anyone else I know as well, because that's my credibility on the line as well. then yeah, I'll just send them. I'll even help them if they really want. I'll be like, hey, go check out these, type this into Upwork or into people per hour, and you should find a good amount of people, that might be willing to work with you, because most of them are going to need someone to work with them from a country where the cost of living is not as high, so that they can pay the sort of budget they're looking for, etc. True.
Well, I think this has been an excellent episode, and definitely, I actually learn things from hearing what other people have gone through as well, and so hopefully, like, other people will get something out of this as well. So with that, we'll let everybody tell us where to find them. David, how do we get a hold of you if people want to follow you?
So I am David B. Hayes on Twitter, and definitely check out WPShout at WPShout.com.
Excellent. Lee, how do we get a hold of you?
You can find me on Twitter. It's Lee Jackson Dev, and you can check out our super duper new brand, which is now live on angledcrown.com. That's angledcrown.com.
Yeah. Excellent.
That was
Jackie,
my radio voice.
Jackie, how do we get a hold of you?
You can find me on Twitter at jdelia and at jackiedelia.com, or head over to rethink.fm. I'm there too.
Excellent podcast. And Sallie, how do we get a hold of you?
You can find me at WPFangirl.com. I am at Sallie Goetsch on Twitter, and if you can spell my name, you will locate me. I am unique in Google.
Only one. Jonathan, how do we get a hold of you?
Oh, it's quite easy, folks. So I'm pretty active on Twitter at Jonathan Denwood. I'm one of these homophobies that do answer their email if it comes from a person that spent some time to personalise their email to me. But so you can email me at jonathan@wp-tonic.com, and I'll get back to you in a couple of days.
Excellent. And you can get a hold of me at my website, which is lockdowndesign.com. You can email me, john@lockdowndesign.com, or you can follow me on Twitter, lockdown_. For the WP Tonic posse in effect, I want to say adios, sayonara, aloha, arrivederci, peace out, we out of here, and get your dose.
Isn't aloha hello?
It can be both.
Can it?
Yeah.
Really? Oh, that's like Italian when you say ciao.
Yeah, there
Ciao.
we go. Yeah.
Ciao, baby. Ciao.
See, you just don't stop learning, even on the exit of this podcast. I'm learning. This is amazing. Guys, go ahead to iTunes and leave an amazing review about this podcast, about how even when they're signing off, you're learning. That's iTunes, 5-star review.
Dropping knowledge bombs for y'all.
So
well,
are
you've been
we in
listening
like
to John
the
Lee Dumas
after
now, have you?
hours?
Well, I'm still recording because sometimes we have a more interesting discussion after.
Welcome to After Hours.
After hours.
I'm not. It's early, Lee, here. It's past 10 in the morning. But there we go.
Hey, I was going to share something that we didn't really have time to share, but one of the things that has really helped me a lot is, after I discovered Erin Flynn and her process for dealing with clients, once I actually formalized and made an introduction packet and a working with me packet.
You're so professional, Jackie.
No, but I'm just saying, here's the thing. It actually, when somebody contacts you and is thinking about working with you, if you've got something formal you can send them, like, here's my introduction packet. This is how I work with clients. This is my hours. This is all. You have something to send them. It really, number one, ups your game over everybody else, but it also can help screen people out that you're not going to be a fit for working with too. And it does it in a really nice way. So that was really I stepped up my game on those things, and it has really helped me a lot is that. And then once a client signs a contract with you to work with you, you've got another packet explaining how we're going to work together and what's, what everybody's responsibilities are. Those things are nice because I tended in the past to just email things to people, like, try to write a paragraph or two, and it was different with every client. And putting it all down in like a nice formal PDF document and being able to send it has made a big difference for me. So if you haven't gotten to that step yet, and you're wanting to, somebody that might be listening, was like a big help for me. And Erin Flynn's website, she had some really great templates to follow, which made it even easier for me.
I'm going to link that up in show notes because I think that's good advice. So
That's great.
definitely.
I'm very impressed.
That's one thing that I forgot to mention too, that I think probably all of us have encountered as well, is people contacting you like out of your business hours and stuff like that. And that's definitely, don't respond if you don't want to set the precedent.
Absolutely.
If they contact
You're
you.
communicating by when you're communicating.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I
Nothing
think
is,
that goes back to what David was saying, though, is that whole communication thing is actually, taking the time to communicate how you're going to work together and actually putting it down can alleviate a lot of misunderstandings and things later. It just makes things, you say, oh, yeah, well, you can remember seeing that in here. It's like, it's all outlined here. And, I don't return emails on Friday, or whatever your policy is, or whatever your hours are, however you're going to work. Formalize it, put it down, and have something that you can distribute versus just trying to, did I email all of that to them? Did I, it doesn't work long term. It doesn't have any scalability to it, put it that way.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking of throwing in, Jackie, is I've had the objection personally to the idea of like sending a PDF or something of like it's informal and like I like to like be personalized, right? And this is so formal and stiff. But it's actually, it gives people a lot of confidence to be like, oh, I will be enveloped in your process and it will guide me through, rather than feeling like they're just like at the whim of some flaky designer or developer who's just
well, it also gives somebody comfort that you have a process. Okay, it's not like we're making this up as we go. This is how we do things. This is the process. This was the first step. This is our, if you're doing a discovery phase, whatever it is you're going to do, if you outline it and say, this is how the project is going to go. This is what you can expect. This is what I'm going to expect from you, that if, I need feedback, that I get it in a reasonable amount of time, and that could delay your deliverables on your project, just to be really clear so that people understand. What happens if client wants to put a project on hold? I pretty much just have all of that covered. And so this way there's no misunderstandings. You don't want you to block your time out for a project, and then in the middle of it, they say, oh, we don't have time right now. We'll get to this later. And, now that's kind of messed up your whole schedule. So if you have a fee to restart a project, or a fee to put a project on hold for more than 60 days or 30 days, whatever your process is, it just, to me, it's really helpful for me to just kind of put it down. And then this way I don't forget to share it.
I think that's all very useful. Definitely. It makes you seem, that's definitely something that I probably need to put on my to-do list for sure, is because I think that definitely makes you seem more professional, and it outlines like all those things. So there's no, question or doubt or like, well, you never told me.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And at least it's clear, and, it's like, I think it just makes sense, because I will forget for sure to say something or to explain something. And, you typically are modifying your contract, and, it's nice to have something that just says, this is how we work. And this is what happens if something goes wrong. This is if you need to put your project on hold, if you need to cancel your project, it's nice to outline that right in your contract right there. What's going to happen if you decide to cancel? What's your process? And then this way it's really clear.
Excellent stuff.
I got a lesson I'd love to share with you guys.
Okay.
If I'm allowed. May
You're
I?
allowed. Do it.
You're allowed. You can do whatever you like.
Cool. All right. So I invested a whole ton of money in the rebrand. This brand has been ready since October last year, and I only launched a week ago. And the lesson here was, I was working until like midnight the other night on an urgent go live, because it's the typical client, new launch, new website just before an exhibition or event or whatever, expo, or however you call it in the States. And they want to be live before that. And I realized I was working until really, really late on someone else's stuff, and I was not prioritizing my own stuff. I wasn't considering myself as also a very important client. I am kind of my own client, and I needed to get the new brand that I'd invested in live so that I could do a whole load of other stuff. So about 3 weeks ago, we decided, right, that's it. We are treating ourselves as just as important a client. So client work happened, and as client works, as client work happens, but one of those clients became us, and we actually went in on the calendar and we got all of our work done. I paid people to come in and help me get stuff, and 301 redirects, all of that good stuff set up, etc. And we just put loads and loads of time into us as if we were a client, and putting ourselves up at the top of the list. Really, really important. We got to get this new brand live because we have got stuff, we've got plans that we want to do. I want to be approaching US companies with this new brand, and I have put it off and put it off and put it off since October last year because I was prioritizing other clients over ourselves. And we are just as important. I'm not saying we are more important, although maybe we are at times, but it's just that whole idea of doing everything for everyone else, and not valuing your own progress and not valuing your own work as well. So that was a massive lesson for me, and I'm so proud of the new brand. It looks freaking awesome, and I'll be damned if I'm ever not going to do our own work again just because clients have got emergencies. Okay, preach over.
Awesome.
Was that a hallelujah?
I think there's a big lesson there, and I think that it's very easy, like in this line of work, to just give all of like your time and energy to clients and leave none for yourself. And I think, like our friend Kim Doyle, preaches that what a lot of people do. Other people like, Sean McCabe, there's many people out there that preach, set aside time each day for your brand first, because otherwise you won't do it.
Well, that actually, John,
yeah.
I'd just like to ask David. You're active developer, and then you've got WPShout. How do you prioritize things?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's about commitment to just having a regular schedule, and that makes time happen. I do think that the thing that came to mind when you were talking, Lee, is the old saying, the cobbler's kids have no shoes, right? Like, this is exactly the problem that everyone has in this kind of client services role, is that you forget that, I also have needs. I mean, it's the problem that people have in general, a lot of them, but
it's the classic entrepreneur's trouble of working in the business instead of on the business.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. So
Sallie's just got those short little things that are just awesome today.
It's not like I made it up.
I love it.
Well, we're gonna end it now on this is our after hours section, folks, and you'll be able to watch this on YouTube and on Facebook, and we're ending it, and we will be back next Saturday, where we were going to be discussing another WordPressy kind of topic. I think it's about e-commerce and plugins that can make that more successful with WooCommerce, which are always great and very popular shows. So we'll see you next week, folks. Howdy, whatever. I can't do John's kind
was
of.
that howdy? You just said howdy, didn't you?
Yeah, howdy. I'm getting it from.
Yeah. That is